The first step in building your 2x4x6 raised bed garden box is to cut and lay out your 2x4 framing. Here are the dimensions of each section of 2x4 and how many you'll need of each. The side pieces that you see on the left and the right, those are exactly 6 feet long. And these pieces here are 4 feet long. To construct one box, you'll need 4 of each length. In addition to these pieces, you'll need vertical framing as well. And for this size box, you'll need 10 pieces of 2x4 measuring 19 inches each. So you see I have them all laid out, and this is kind of an expanded view. If you want sort of a shortcut of how to cut 5 pieces out of one 2x4x8 without having to remeasure 19 inches all over again, what I do is just have the numbers memorized, but I've also written them here as sort of a cheat. You'll just make a mark at 19, 38, 57, 76, and 95. This gets you 5 of these vertical pieces out of one 2x4x8. Now the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and construct this framing. At this point, what I'm going to be using is a hammer drill and 3-inch exterior deck screws. I'm going to go ahead and get to work putting that frame together now. Okay, now that I have my frame constructed, the next thing I'm going to do is figure out the midpoint for these vertical braces that are going to go in the middle. What this is going to do is keep the metal wall here from bowing out like this from the weight of the dirt inside it pushing out. But we want to center these on our board, on our box, on both sides. So we know that this is 6 feet in length, so it's just a matter of pulling our tape from one corner to the other, finding our 3-foot mark and placing a line just above it, and then doing the same thing at the top. If you want to get really technical, you can find the center point of this 2x4 and then line up your 2 marks, or you can just eyeball it like I typically do. And then you'll just repeat the same thing, but on the opposite side. Once you get your vertical braces in, all 10 of them, now it's time to move on to our corrugated metal. I like to put the end walls in first. These are going on the 4-foot lengths, the 4-foot sides. However, because the metal is going to be inset, you're not going to cut your metal at 4 feet exactly. Instead, what you're going to do is cut your metal at 44 inches and then 44 inches on this end as well, obviously. So you go ahead and get your piece of corrugated metal, measure it 44 down, and then 88 down. Then just using some tin snips like these, you're gonna cut across the metal. Okay, I've got my 2 end pieces cut and staged in place. But before I mount them, I'm gonna go ahead and cut my 6-foot sections as well, my lengthier sections. So that way I'll just go ahead and mount and screw in all the pieces at once. The way I do this is I take a 12-foot sheet of metal and I measure 70 inches and then I measure to 140 inches. I take my Sharpie in a straight edge and put my mark all the way across. Now if you're using a Sharpie to do this, it's ideal that the metal be dry. Otherwise the Sharpie is going to have a hard time leaving its mark. Then I just take my tin snips, I'll make the 2 cuts, and then slide it into place. Again, the reason why we're not doing full 6-foot sections is because this is going to be inset, so we want it a little bit less than 6 feet, or a little bit less than 72 inches. In this case, we're going with exactly 70 inches. This gives us a little bit of wiggle room inside our box. The next thing I'm going to do is to cut a piece 45 inches to be the center brace right here. And this is going to keep the framing pulled together so that these end pieces and the bottoms don't bow out from the weight of the dirt. Now we need to cut our 70-inch piece of metal to accommodate for the center brace. So you just center it inside here. Take your Sharpie and draw basically a 3.5-inch notch on this piece of metal. And then you're going to take your tin snips and cut it out. And once you're done with that, it'll look just like this. Your metal will fit snugly around that 2x4. To attach the metal sheets to the 2x4 framing, I'm going to use a smaller 1-inch exterior screw with a Phillips head bit. Now, because these are not self-tapping screws, one of the things I like to do is to get my screw positioned to where I want it, and then gently tap onto the back of my drill. And what it does is it creates a small puncture in the metal, and it allows you to drive that screw a lot faster. You don't want to do the screw too tight, or else it'll create a visible dent in your metal. So there's our first screw. Now what I'm going to do is place them about a foot apart all the way across the top, where I'm going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 screws on the top. Then I'm going to do about 3 screws along the bottom, and then 4 to 5 screws along the bottom as well. And that'll be this piece of metal, and I'll just replicate that system all the way around. So the metal sheeting is now attached to the 2x4 framing. If I had to guess, it took about 40 1-inch screws to complete this. Now at this point, you could have a complete box, and you could start gardening in this box, but one of the things I like to do is to finish out the top with deck boards, and we're going to show that process now. I've taken a standard 12-foot deck board, I've cut it into 6-foot sections and put them on either end. Then using 2.5-inch deck screws, attach them to the top of the frame. This is the halfway finished look. The next thing I'm going to do is to take some other portions of deck board, which I believe are going to be about 51 inches in length. I'm going to rip them in half and put them at the ends here to give it a nice finished look. So here's the finished product. You can see the last thing I did is I put 2, and I stand corrected, it's 51.5-inch pieces of decking here and there. And that just kind of gives it a nice clean finished look. Also creates a surface where someone can sit, put a cup, put different gardening utensils, and gives it a nice clean look. So that's it, guys. This is our tutorial on a 2x6x4 raised bed garden box. I'm going to put a card up above if you'd like to see an instructional video on how to make a box very similar to this one, but twice the length. This build, if I had to estimate, cost between $125 to $150 in material, and it took me about 2 hours to construct. And the prices of the material are going to vary based on your location. Guys, I hope I earned a thumbs up on this video. Please feel free to subscribe for more content like this. We'll see you in the next one. Keep it real.